Soon after the holidays, Herr Grunlich went back to Hamburg, for his flourishing business demanded his personal attention, and the Buddenbrooks agreed with him that Tony had had time enough before the betrothal to make his acquaintance. The question of a house was quickly arranged. Tony, who looked forward extravagantly to life in a large city, had expressed the wish to settle in Hamburg itself, and indeed in the Spitalstrasse, where Herr Grunlich's office was. But the bridegroom, by manly persistence, won her over to the purchase of a villa outside the city, near Eimsbüttel, a romantic and retired spot, an ideal nest for a newly wedded pair. Procul negotis. I wonder what that means. That's in Latin. Ah, he had not yet forgotten quite all his Latin. It was an exclamation point. Thus December passed, and at the beginning of the year 46, the wedding was celebrated. There was a splendid wedding feast to which half the town was bidden. Tony's friends, among them Armgard von Schilling, who arrived in a towering coach, danced with Tom's and Christian's friends, among them Andreas Giesecke, son of the fire commissioner, and now studiosus juris. Also Stefan and Edward Kistenmacher of Kistenmacher and Son. They danced in the dining room and the hall, which had been strewn with talc for the occasion. Among the liveliest of the lively was Consul Peter Dolman, and he got hold of all the earthenware crocks he could find and broke them on the flags of the big passage. I think they sprinkle talc on the floor for the dancing so your feet don't slip. Frau Stutt from Belfounders Street had another opportunity to mingle in the society of the great, for it was she who helped Mamselle Youngman and the two seamstresses to adjust Tony's toilette on the great day. She had, as God was her judge, never seen a more beautiful bride. Fat as she was, she went on her knees, and, with her eyes rolled up in admiration, fastened the myrtle twigs on the white moire antique. This was in the breakfast room. Herr Grunlich, in his long-skirted frock coat and silk waistcoat, waited at the door. His rosy face had a correct and serious expression. His wart was powdered, and his gold-yellow whiskers carefully curled. I forgot. This just reminded me that I need a gold powdered mustache. Above in the hall, wait, I have to mark this so I don't forget. Above in the hall, where the marriage was to take place, the family gathered, a stately assemblage. There sat the old Krogers, a little ailing, both of them, but distinguished figures always. There was Consul Kroger with his sons Jürgen and Jacob, the latter having come from Hamburg like the Duchamps. There were Gotthold Buddenbrook and his wife, born Stutwing, with their 3 offspring, Friederike, Henriette, and Fifi, none of whom was, unfortunately, likely to marry. I wonder why. There was the Mecklenburg branch, represented, I wonder if it's because they're like cut off from society because of what Gotthold did. I don't know. Hopefully they'll tell us. There was the Mecklenburg branch, represented by Clotilde's father, Herr Bernhard Buddenbrook, who had come in from Thankless and looked with large eyes at the seigneurial house of his rich relatives. The relatives from Frankfurt had contented themselves with sending presents. The journey was too arduous. In their place were the only guests not members of the family, Dr. Gerbau, the family physician, and Mademoiselle Whitebrocht, Tony's motherly friend. Sesame White-Brocked, with fresh ribbons on her cap over the side curls, in a little black dress. "Be happy, you good child," she said when Tony appeared at Herr Grunlich's side in the hall. She reached up and kissed her with a little explosion on the forehead. The family was satisfied with the bride. Tony looked pretty, gay, and at her ease, if a little pale from excitement and tension. I can feel a hair on my lip. As long as you can't see it, we're fine, but it's bothering me. The hall had been decorated with flowers and an altar arranged on the right side. Pastor Coling of St. Mary's performed the service and laid special stress upon moderation. Everything went according to custom and arrangement. Tony brought out a hearty yes, and Herr Grunlich gave his little ahem beforehand to clear his throat. Afterward, everybody ate long and well. While the guests continued to eat in the salon, with the pastor in their midst, the consul and his wife accompanied the young pair, who had dressed for their journey, out into the snowy, misty air, where the great traveling coach stood before the door, packed with boxes and bags. After Tony had expressed many times her conviction that she should soon be back again on a visit, and that they too would not delay long to come to Hamburg to see her, she climbed in good spirits into the coach and let herself be carefully wrapped up by the consul in the warm fur rug. Her husband took his place by her side. "And Grunlich," said the consul, "the new laces are in the small satchel on top. You take a little in under your overcoat, don't you? This excise, one has to get around it the best one can. Farewell, 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 dear Tony. God bless you." "You will find good accommodation in Arsenberg, won't you?" asked the Frau Consul. "All ready reserved, my dear mamma," answered Herr Grunlich. Ew. Anton, Line, Trine, and Sophie. Who's Trine? Anton, Line, Trine, and Sophie took leave of Ma'am Grunlich. The coach door, oh no, she's called Ma'am Grunlich now. The coach door was about to be slammed when Tony was overtaken by a sudden impulse. Despite all the trouble it took, she unwound herself again from her wrappings, climbed ruthlessly over Herr Grunlich, who began to grumble, and embraced her father with passion. "Adieu, papa, adieu, my good papa." And then she whispered softly, "Are you satisfied with me?" Ugh. The consul pressed her without words to his heart, then put her from him and shook her hands with deep feeling. Now everything was ready. The coach door slammed, the coachman cracked his whip, the horses dashed away so that the coach windows rattled. The Frau Consul let fly her little white handkerchief, and the carriage, rolling down the street, disappeared in the mist. Oh, that's making me emotional. The consul stood thoughtfully next to his wife, who drew her cloak about her shoulders with a graceful movement. "There she goes, Betsy. Yes, Jean, the first to leave us. Do you think she is happy with him?" "I cannot cry. I have makeup. I have things to film." "Oh, Betsy, she is satisfied with herself, which is better. It is the most solid happiness we can have on this earth." They went back to their guests. Chapter 15. I can still feel this hair. Hold on. Oh my God. Chapter 15. Thomas Buddenbrook went down Mang Street as far as the 5 houses. He avoided Broad Street so as not to be accosted by acquaintances and obliged to greet them. With his hands deep in the big pockets of his warm, dark, gray overcoat, he walked, sunk in thought, over the hard, sparkling snow which crunched under his boots. He went his own way, and whither it led no one knew but himself. The sky was pale blue and clear, the air biting and crisp. A still, severe, clear weather, with 5 degrees of frost. In short, a matchless February day. Thomas walked down the 5 houses, crossed Baker's Alley, and went along a narrow cross street into Fisher's Lane. He followed this street, which led down to the Trave, parallel to Meng Street, for a few steps, and paused before a small house, a modest flower shop, with a narrow door and dingy show window, where a few pots of bulbs stood on a pane of green glass. He went in, whereupon the bell above the door began to give tongue like a little watchdog. Within, before the counter, talking to the young saleswoman, was a little fat elderly lady in a turkey shawl. She was choosing a pot of flowers, examining, smelling, criticizing, chattering, and constantly obliged to wipe her mouth with her handkerchief. Thomas Buddenbrook greeted her politely and stepped to one side. She was a poor relation of the Langhalls, a good-natured, garrulous old maid who bore the name of one of the best families without herself belonging to their set. That is, she was not asked to the large dinners, but to the small coffee circles. She was known to almost all the world as Aunt Lottchen. She turned toward the door with her pot of flowers wrapped up in tissue paper under her arm, and Thomas, after greeting her again, said in an elevated voice to the shop girl, "Give me a couple of roses, please. Never mind the kind. Well, La France." Then, after Aunt Lottchen had shut the door behind her and gone away, he said in a lower voice, "Put them away again, Anna. How are you, little Anna? Here I am, and I've come with a heavy heart." Anna wore a white apron over her simple black frock. She was wonderfully pretty, delicately built as a fawn. She had an almost Mongol type of face, somewhat prominent cheekbones, narrow black eyes full of a soft gleam, and a pale yellow skin like that of which is rare anywhere. Her hands, of the same tint, were narrow and more beautiful than a shop girl's are wont to be. She went behind the counter at the right end so that she could not be seen through the shop window. Thomas followed on the outside of the counter and, bending over, kissed her on the lips and the eyes. You are quite frozen, poor boy," she said. 5 degrees, said Tom. "I didn't notice it. I felt so sad coming over." He sat down on the table, keeping her hand in his, and went on. "Listen, Anna, we'll be sensible today, won't we? The time has come." "Oh, dear," she said miserably, and lifted her apron to her eyes. "It had to happen sometime, Anna. No, don't weep. We were going to be reasonable, weren't we? What else is there to do? One has to bear such things." "When?" asked Anna, sobbing. "Day after tomorrow." "Oh, God, no. Why tomorrow? A week longer. 5 days. Please, oh, please." "Impossible, dear Anna. Everything is arranged and in order. They are expecting me in Amsterdam. I couldn't make it a day longer, no matter how much I wanted. And that is so far away, So far away. Amsterdam? Nonsense. That isn't far. We can always think of each other, can't we? And I'll write to you. You'll see. I'll write directly I've got there. Do you remember, she said, 1.5 years ago at the Rifle Club fair? He interrupted her ardently. Do I remember? Yes, 1.5 years ago. I took you for an Italian. I bought a pink and put it in my buttonhole. I'm sorry. I bought a pink and put it in my buttonhole. I have to mark that. I still have it. I am taking it with me to Amsterdam. What a heat! How hot and dusty it was on the meadow. Yes, you brought me a glass of lemonade from the next booth. I remember it like yesterday. Everything smelled of fatty cakes and people. But it was fine. We knew right away how we felt about each other. You wanted to take me on the carousel, but I couldn't go. I had to be in the shop. The old woman would have scolded. No, I know it wouldn't have done, Anna, she said softly and clearly, but that is the only thing I've refused you. He kissed her again on the lips and the eyes. Adieu, darling little Anna. We must begin to say goodbye. Oh, you will come back tomorrow? Yes, of course, and day after tomorrow, early, if I can get away. But there is one thing I want to say to you, Anna. I am going, after all, rather far away. Amsterdam is a long way off, and you are staying here. But don't throw yourself away, I tell you. She wept into her apron, holding it up with her free hand to her face. And you? And you? God knows, Anna, what will happen. One isn't young forever. You are a sensible girl. You have never said anything about marriage and that sort of thing. God forbid that I should ask such a thing of you. One is carried along, you see. If I live, I shall take over the business and make a good match. You see, I am open with you at parting, Anna. I wish you every happiness, darling, darling little Anna. But don't throw yourself away, do you hear? For you haven't done that with me. I swear it. They fucked, didn't they? And he's telling her to go marry somebody else, and she's not soiled because she fucked him. The rich boy will fuck the poor girl, but he won't marry her, even though it's love. How much better would this world have been if people married for love instead of these nasty creatures? It was warm in the shop. A moist, you know what? I love that I get to talk while we're reading. How could you read? How could you read an audiobook with a straight face and not have reactions to it? I mean, I guess if it was your 10th reading because you've been practicing, but oh my. Part of the joy of reading is experiencing and thinking and feeling and expressing. Thank you for being here and watching and reading, listening with me. It was warm in the shop. A moist scent of earth and flowers was in the air. Outside, the winter sun was hurrying to its repose in a pure, delicate sunset, like one painted on porcelain, beautiful the sky across the river. People hurried past the window, their chins tucked into their turned-up collars. No one gave a glance into the corner of the little flower shop at the two who stood there saying their last farewells. We have 30 seconds left on the clock, and now we are reaching part 4, so